Hi everyone. I just would like to share some insights about Saturn conjunct Venus today. This is quite a big story and it's pretty important, which is why I've just decided to speak to this just for a few moments. May or may not be helpful for some people. Venus is in Pisces every year. However, Saturn is only in Pisces every 28 or 29 years. So the last 2 years, the first pass of Saturn to Venus in Pisces was in 2023. And the second one is right now, approaching, applying, should be exact by later tonight or tomorrow. The next time Saturn will conjunct Venus in Pisces will be in, 29 years. So this is quite an important closure. This is what it is. It has every signature of closure, completions, and karmic implications attached to it. The full moon in Cancer just a couple of days ago, which is still pulsating, I think, is has been such a powerful, powerful, powerful full moon. Probably, I think this is going to be one that a lot of us will remember for a very long time. Different reasons for different people, but it was just such a significant full moon. I bring it up in this context because I think this full moon had so much to do with karmic clearing as well, and or really difficult family situations coming up that have, just been sort of dragging along over a really long time, or hidden, or, just not acknowledged, not confronted, not dealt with. So this is a really important path for basically dealing with these things head on, as it were. No pun intended, with Mars in Cancer, which was there with the full moon as well. Very difficult full moon in Cancer, conjunct Mars, square Chiron. Chiron Mars out of bounds in fall and retrograde. That's a very difficult Mars. Closest to the Earth, which is what retrograde implies. And so the energy of Mars has been incredibly, to say the least, intense on the Earth. And some places have experienced it very literally, such as California. So I'm wondering, what's come up for any of you guys personally. Some of you may be near the California area, or you may know people around there, or you may have just had, personal family dynamics and themes really blow up during this time. That's almost a given for so many people. Including in my own life, there's been a lot of issues that have come up. But this morning I was thinking about Saturn with Venus. As I said, this is the second passage of Saturn being conjunct Venus in the last 2 years. And the last time it happened was about 29 years ago. And I've thought back in my own life, what was going on at that time. Now, some of you might not be old enough to remember. I am. So when I think back, I can tie this to an incredibly significant story that actually relates to my family. So when you're thinking about Venus, we need to think quite broadly. Venus connects to so many different things. When people think of Venus, they typically will think of love, money, relationships, right? But the fact is that Venus basically corresponds to absolutely anything that you value and have a connection to. Now, that can be a lot of different things. And it absolutely brings in friendships and family matters as well. And Saturn is definitely the lord of karma. And if that word doesn't sit well with you, you can think about it like this. The the archetype of Saturn, which has so many different complex layers, in very simple, mundane, basic, physical, here and now, in this world, in this reality terms, it basically speaks to the work that we need to do, the work in our life that will involve family members, friends, whomever, whatever, anything. It's just the work that we are here to do in order to grow. And we can't bypass Saturn and jump to Uranus and just, do the freedom rebel thing. We must walk through the gates of Saturn before we even get to Uranus. So we have to deal with our karmic debts. We have to deal with our responsibilities. We have to deal with why we have chosen Saturn in the position of our natal chart, the sign, house aspects, etc. We have to work with Saturn as we just continue to grow and evolve every single day. That's why we have the Saturn cycle, the 30-year cycle, which is broken down into sevens. Every 7 years, we have an experience of Saturn's cycle at a very critical point. And then we have the first Saturn return, then we have the second Saturn return, and so forth. So there's no evading Saturn. Coming back to the story of Saturn and Venus, if you think back to what happened about 29 years ago, you may be able to draw a very clear and strong correlation to matters that are arising in your life at the moment. That certainly has happened with me, which is why I was inspired to come on this morning and just speak to this briefly. As I said, it's going to be different things for different people, but do not limit the meaning of Saturn conjunct Venus to just love and money, because, as I said, it corresponds to absolutely anything you value, anything you connect with. And Pisces is at the end of the wheel, the end of the zodiac. Saturn is in this sign, bringing us to a point of culmination. And Venus being in this sign at the moment is really just finalizing the closure of a story that would have started around 30 years ago. And it might be so subtle and in the background. And there may have been years and years where the story wasn't animated and there was nothing going on as it appears on the surface. But when you're talking about karmic imprints and karmic connections and themes that started at some point and come to some kind of culmination and need some sort of resolution and clearing, it doesn't mean that we're going to see something around that story every single day. This is a long cycle. It's a 30-year cycle that I'm speaking to. So I'm just wondering how many of you may be experiencing this at this point in time, particularly because of the full moon we just had, which was in Cancer, a very difficult full moon, square Chiron. That would have, that's already started the amplification of very, very sensitive matters in family dynamics, extremely sensitive, bringing up things from the past that you may have thought were put to rest. You may have thought were finished, and they're not. So they're very likely, they have very likely been triggered and activated by this full moon. Things that you just never would have thought would appear again, but have. And so I guess it's depending on who you are and what it's brought up for you. It is important, and it is also an opportunity to finally put certain things to rest one way or another. Now, sometimes particular themes and dynamics can be so difficult. They bring up so much pain. They bring up a lot of difficult things that people may have to face or be honest about. And if you're in a situation where you've got certain individuals or an individual that has been in denial of something and has been hiding it from you, just hasn't been honest, hasn't dealt with the situation, that person is going to be in the spotlight right now. And I can assure you, if they've taken the path of denial and or lying and or hiding, they are going to be extremely activated at this time in a very aggressive way, most likely, and therefore incredibly defensive and reactive. So if you're dealing with that kind of situation, it's very, very difficult. And what's the best way to deal with that? Well, in my opinion, honesty is always the best policy, but there's also a timing of how things need to unfold and what's going to be dealt with or revealed throughout a process. None of this is going to be resolved in one day. But at this point right now, I suspect for the most part, what's happened is very significant and core themes that belong to the past have reared their head, have come to the surface, and there's no denying them for anybody. And, when Venus moves on, which she will pretty quickly, it's going to be a pretty interesting story, which I will come back and speak to quite thoroughly. It will be when Venus forms the conjunction to the Sun, and we experience the transformative journey of Venus finishing her evening star phase and being reborn into her morning star phase. And so that's a Mars ruled sign, right? That Aries Venus star point is ruled by Mars. And this is going to happen, I think, when Mars is still out of bounds, actually. So I think this upcoming Aries Venus star point is going to be quite loaded, pretty intense energy. But I will come back to speak to that. And that's, what we are sort of starting to head towards. But before that, we are here in this present moment, we have Venus and Saturn together. And this matter will be quite prominent and quite strong for certain individuals, especially if you've got Venus in Pisces. I do, and perhaps that's why this matter has come up so strongly for me. It is about finishing something that started many, many years ago, around 28, 29 years ago, and I can pinpoint the exact thing that happened then has come back again, and it is actually connected to my family. So that's really all I wanted to share for today, just in case you do have some things that are coming up and you haven't considered this conjunction of Venus to Saturn, or you have just considered it as just a 1-2 day transit, and so it's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal. It's a very, very big deal, because the last time Saturn and Venus were here at this point was around 28 years ago, and the next time they will be there is in 28 years. So it is a cycle of culmination once again, especially because it's happening in the sign of Pisces, which is finishing certain things, completing endings, karmic things being cleared and finished as well. And, Pisces endings, it can bring up a lot of sadness as well. It can bring up disappointments too. Pisces being ruled by Neptune. But on the other hand, because Saturn is the absolute vibration and frequency of this earth that crystallizes the matter of things. It brings to the forefront, to the reality, the truth of what's going on, and the things that need to be addressed and corrected and worked on. So the good thing about Saturn here is that it will potentially help crystallize a lot of things where there may have been things hiding and or confusion around certain matters. So it's not an easy passage, I have to admit, but it is, most importantly, it's just a very crucial passage because it's a passage of culmination. And the next conjunction between Saturn and Venus is going to be in Aries. And that's going to be, I think, after the Sun-Venus conjunction, which, as I said, I will come back to speak to, but let's just have a quick look at some dates. Oh, sorry. I've just remembered. It's going to be well and truly beyond that. The Saturn-Venus conjunction, that is going to be well and truly beyond the conjunction of the Sun and Venus in Aries this year. The next conjunction between Venus and Saturn will be in Aries, but it will be in 2026, and it will actually be with Neptune. I'll just show you. So we need just to get Venus in Aries. So let's just do that. So you can see what I'm talking about. There it is there. See that? Neptune at 1, Venus at 2, Saturn at 2. That's March 2026. Now that's a fair way away, although a year goes by very quickly. But the point is, I'm not going to speak to that now because the most imminent thing at the moment is simply this conjunction right here, which is a cycle culminating and finishing. And something really huge is going to be reborn when Venus gets into Aries and conjuncts the Sun in March this year. Again, I will come back to speak to that thoroughly. Okay, I just wanted to share those thoughts and just I'm just curious to know if any of you relate to that and if it has brought up these sorts of themes and dynamics. Of course, it can be in relationships as well, but do not exclude matters coming up with family and could be money, land, property, all that sort of stuff. So I'd be very interested to hear from any of you or all of you how this relates to you. Okay, I will see you all very soon. Take care of yourselves and much love.